2020 was one of the worst years on record. During difficult times, people always seek out escaping by taking a trip, go and watch the movie, or just watch the game. But because of the pandemic, people are deprived of such privilege. And it's not just here, it is worldwide. Not only there are travel restrictions, but all popular destinations are being temporarily closed.
That indeed turned out to be my worst nightmare.
COVID-19 pandemic reason enough to declare 2020 was the worst. This wasn't the year only health crisis, as a new Ebola outbreak was reported in Dominican Republic. Yet 2020 will always remain at
The U.S. has the highest death toll so far. It also has the highest number of cases, followed by India and Brazil.
Yet 2020 will always remain as the year that coronavirus suspended loved ones around the world and caused numerous lost lives. Also have the highest number of cases. As of writing, 7 million cases have been confirmed.
Ford is expected to announce province-wide restrictions. Let's listen in.
Ontario. We saw this morning's modeling that our COVID-19 numbers continue to accelerating at an alarming rate. Unfortunately, despite the restrictions, we've seen growing numbers of people traveling between regions within Ontario. COVID is spreading rapidly from high outbreak areas to areas with fewer cases.
Forced to face a further night standing in their vehicle with no end in sight, transport truck drivers are lashing out. An emergency COVID-19 testing program is underway. Drivers must sit and wait inside their vehicle until a member of the military or the National Health Service come by to
information. The people need to be patient if they have information. If no information, maybe, I don't know, they get worried.
Infection rates are surging in the UK. Cases are up 57% from last week, and hospitalizations are nearing those seen in April.
But that's not even hard. The change even never been more appreciated.
A major winter storm is making its way across the northeastern United States. The storm knocked out power to thousands and caused hundreds of accidents up and down the East Coast. Some areas are expected to have as much as 2 feet or more than half a meter of snow on the ground by tonight.
A 6.4 earthquake and multiple aftershocks rocking the island just a day after a 5.8 earthquake destroyed multiple homes in this famous landmark, the Punta Ventana rock formation.
As of writing, 2020 California wildfire season has already burned over 4,000 across and cost $2 billion US. As adventurous as that is, 46 billion acres were lost in Australia.
We had roughly about 2 million acres burned throughout the state of California. Now we take a look at about plus or minus 12 million acres burning in Australia. By some estimates, it's over 14 million acres right now, and it doesn't look like there's any end in sight.
Black summer, as it's often called, costs more than $103 billion in Australian dollars, or about 73 billion in US dollars. The fire claimed 34 human lives and another 405 from smoke. The wildlife suffered an even more substantial toll, up to 1 billion animal loss.
Reports that as much as half of the island's koala population has been wiped out.
A failure of fire was an early theory. We're a long way from knowing the truth. And then, nothing. No more coordinates broadcast.
That same month, the Ukraine international airline was traveling from Toronto to Kiev, got caught in the middle of the 2020 presidential Gulf.
A U.S. official confirms to ABC that Iran turned on a radar aimed at the jetliner, which would guide anti-aircraft missiles from a mobile launcher. A U.S. satellite then captured the firing of 2 missiles at the 737, which was less than 5,000 feet off the ground.
The Boeing 737-8 was shot down by Islamic Revolution hardcore, resulting in the death of all 176 passengers and all crew members. Iran initially denied responsibility, but Evolution admitted to shooting down the plane by accident. The country had been on high alert after an unrelated yet but created disappointment plane crash would occurred in Pakistan later that May. Although 2 passengers survived, in 2014, 2,750 tons of confiscated ammonium nitrate were improperly stored at a warehouse 12 Beirut, Lebanon.
And eyewitnesses say that balconies collapsed, people were left trapped under the rubble. Government officials are saying a very high number of people have been injured, and it's feared there'll be a high death toll as well.
Fireworks had also been stored in the same warehouse, which possibly triggered the fire explosion that occurred on August 4th, 2020. This was followed by a few more earth-trembling explosions, less than a minute later, engulfing Beirut in a red-orange cloud of smoke. While the detonation extent caused the disaster left determined 204 dead, 6,500 injured, and roughly 300,000 homeless. It also caused 15 billion in property damage, hurting an already fragile economy.
This catastrophic explosion has scarred not just the city's skyline, but the psyche.
One of the biggest blows is the loss of our beloved icon, inspiration, public figure died every year, but 2020 was especially painful. Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash with 8 others, including his 13-year-old daughter.
And tonight, we remember the life and legacy of Kobe Bryant and join the Los Angeles Lakers, the Buss family, and the entire basketball world in mourning his passing.
People were just as devastated by the shock loss. Chadwick Boseman has been privately battling with colon cancer since 2016. The death of Ruth Berger Ginsburg.
The flag at the White House may be flying at half-mast, but politics goes on. Donald Trump making clear he's going to nominate a conservative replacement without delay. Democrats, though, led by presidential candidate Joe Biden, say no decision should be made until after a new president is sworn in.
Nairo Rivera, Kirk Douglas, Kelly Pattinson, Eddie Vinson, Eddie Van Halen, Alexa Beck, Sean Connery, Diego Maradona was just one of the other household names we lost this year.
Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Further damage why 2020 was so ruthless.
I will have lost to the worst candidate in the history of presidential politics. If I lose, what do I do?
The events of 2020 divide America, and the fight of the White House fueled the tension. The 2020 U.S. presidential election proved emotionally damaging. Whether you support Donald Trump or Joe Biden or any other independent, election cycle was summed up as the first presidential debate was played out more like a shouting match.
You're going to pack the court? Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that
because
question?
the question is, the question is,
Justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
The stress continued behind election day, with voters taking longer to count.
It can also take longer to process these mail-in ballots. Election workers need to open envelopes, flatten ballots, and verify signatures before they're scanned and counted. And on top of that, some states are slower than others.
And nail-biting race spoke supporters as well as lawsuit from Republicans.
Really gonna change? When is it really gonna stop?
The outrage building nationwide.
Between the fatal shooting Breonna Taylor in March and Rachel Brooks in June, police brutality and racial profiling under the spotlight in 2020. for many, the boiling point come on May 25th, when 46-year-old African-American George Floyd died during an arrest, as the police officer Derek Chauvin nailed on his neck for over 8 minutes.
The death of George Floyd sparked outrage and condemnation across the US and in many other countries. Protesters say they've had enough of decades of racism and repression and brutality by those who are supposed to protect and serve.
This injustice spread wide protest across the nation, most peaceful, although there were also incidents of rioting, looting, clashes between police and protesters. Controversially, President Trump threatened to send in the military to clear out protesters of Lafayette Square for a photo opportunity.
I was watching people fall down as they ran. I was watching people get pushed aside by police horses and by National Guardsmen carrying military police.